Hello, welcome back to Gearing Up, the podcast about life, gear, photos, shenanigans, all that kind of stuff. Normally I am here with my wife, but today doing something a little bit different. I am on location today with one of the makers that I wanted to feature in this sort of maker series, audio series. I guess this will be episode 6 of this season, if I'm scheduling that out correctly in my brain. If not, disregard. But instead of my wife, I am joined by Houston area maker Paul Lusk. Hello, Paul.
How's it going?
It's going. Full transparency, we did this, and my recorder gave me a little bit of a hard time, so we're backing up just a little bit. But no worries, we are good now.
I'm going to take 2.
I've got the green light. Take 2.
It was meet and greet a few minutes ago. Now we're getting back on track.
Perfect.
That's cool.
So just a bit of a background on what this is and why we're doing this. On the website, I have the Maker series, and I've gone through a bunch of different makers and kind of walked through their stories, and this is essentially the audio version, audio companion to that. And again, I wanted to just take a bit of a dive into some of the folks in the community that are doing cool stuff. And what we were talking about was kind of how I came upon Paul Lusk and Paul Lusk Knives and everything that you're doing. And it started off with a quick Google. I didn't find you by the traditional, I guess my traditional means.
The new traditional
way. Most of the folks that I've talked to and talked about have just been in that sort of Instagram community where we're, all kind of following the same people. But I wanted to branch out. And so, I just did some Googling, and Paul Lusk came up as a Houston area knife maker. And so I reached out. We've been kind of back and forth, and finally we're sitting down and we're here. So
congratulations!
Thank you.
We've been through just a lot of just fall throughs and a bunch of can we do it this week? No, next week.
Scheduling.
Next week.
Yeah.
But, I've had a lot of people, and I have to commend you for showing up. I have a lot of people who are like, hey, can we come by? We're on such and such news. Can we do a news program on you on Thursday? And they don't ever show up. Yeah. And you're like, dude, you didn't even come? I'm just like, so, hey, you're
juggling
here. Yeah.
Juggling all the stuff we've had going on in the last few weeks. It's been crazy, and work's been busy. So it's good to get out here and do more of these. So, but no, we were talking about, how I found you and kind of the difference between, some of the makers that I have experience with that I've talked to, and they don't have that kind of traditional background of knife making, and maybe they're completely self-taught, or, they've built their audience a different way, and you have kind of taken what I refer to as like the more traditional approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what makes you different enough that I was interested in wanting to talk to you. I mean, if I get the same story 10 times over, it's kind of boring, right? So.
Well, you're tactfully saying that you're old and don't know technology. No, but no, in what we were saying a little while ago, I'm not Instagrammable. I don't have a knife that's really, it's tactical or, EDC.
Thank
or
you
camping
for not
and all
having
that
a tactical
stuff.
knife.
Yeah, and, I've done some flippers and stuff, and they're great, but it's not my deal.
Sure.
And with me, I want to make something that's the people look at and they go, that's nice.
Right.
And they not that's sick or that's, so cool. They're just like, hey, this is nice. I want a good gift for someone, for their retirement or something like that. And so that's what I shoot for, because I'm not military and I'm not first responder or police or anything like that. And thank goodness I'm not, because I'd be terrible at it. And I love those guys and women, but I don't have that background, that mindset.
Sure.
And we need those people. I love them, but I can't connect with that audience.
Sure.
And what I want to connect with is just more of a classical, elegant, but not too I don't want to hit Rolls Royce.
Right.
I want to hit Lexus
Makes
area.
sense.
And I want it, to be in the middle where people can save up, or they can buy it on the spur of the moment, just depending on what they are. But that's something that I shoot for, is just something that's going to look classy. My mom would always say, that's very Ralph Lauren.
Right.
It's got that Ralph Lauren look.
Right.
So I want something that has that type of look to it.
Right on. I think you nailed that. I think you've found, your lane, and I think you're crushing it. I think just in what I've seen and what you've put out there, it's been really awesome. And like we were saying, your books are a couple months out. You're steady, but you're not creating this ridiculous backlog of folks that are waiting forever and charging ridiculous amounts of money. And I think the customer base you've got is going to continue to be loyal, and I think you're gonna have some great folks there. But I also think that I made mention of this earlier, that I think that in that community, that Instagrammable community, the upper to higher end stuff is, I think it's gaining popularity. And I look back and I speak from a personal standpoint. Right. So when I started collecting, because I'm not a maker, right? When I started collecting, I was, $60-$80 was a big chunk, for a knife for me. And now, fast forward probably 2 years, and I have a Tim Curry slip joint that was, $550. And I've handled, and I've had, whatever, some knives that are still in that $500 to $800 price range, from your upper middle end production knives, like your Chris Reeve knives, and your right now I've got the Berg Blades Wee Knives collab that was, I think it was like $300. So again, just from a personal standpoint, we are outside. We're in the shop, actually. So we
just heard a car start up.
There's some noise outside.
It should be over soon.
We just roll with it. But no, I mean, in that, again, from a personal, standpoint, it's. I feel like it's just getting to be more, not acceptable. That's a weird word to use, but I feel like it's just more commonplace for folks that are into the hobby to justify. I mean, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, could you ever justify a $500 knife? I would have said, you're crazy. Like, there's no way. And once you dig a little deeper, you start to understand, right? Like, you can justify it.
It's the coffee industry. I used to own a coffee shop years ago.
Okay.
And $3.50 for a cup of coffee. You kidding me, boy? And I drink my Folgers, and so they're different crowds.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we and then you give them a nice cup of coffee. They go, well, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
I can see this now.
Yeah.
And then some people will, some people won't.
Yeah.
And so exactly. I mean, some people, $60. Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna, I'm gonna get something made in XYZ country over there, and then we're gonna throw it in the trash. Yep. And that's not the kind of product I want to be known for.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, exactly.
I that's a great analogy. Yeah, I mean, I think I talked to the whenever I was doing Cobalt Customs, I think we talked about the same thing, where it seems ridiculous until it becomes normal, and I think it's all relative to what you know.
What you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've noticed that too. The quality, and it's crazy to me, kind of on the production side, starting to notice and understand and justify the extra cost, because I see the differences firsthand.
Right.
A cheap steel it's a cheap steel. You get what you pay for, and it doesn't hold a great edge. Yeah. Then it's not going to work what it's made for. Anyways, so let's jump into a little bit of background. I wanted to kind of dive into some of the history of your career as a knife maker and what you do. So, how long have you been at this?
About 11 or 12 years. I first got my feet in a door about 12 years ago, in a door of a knife shop. Okay. First time I ever laid eyes on one was 12 years ago.
Okay. And what, from that moment where I guess what started the drive or the passion or what gave you the motivation to take this hobby up? Because I guess it started as a hobby.
No, it didn't. I do things reverse order.
No, that's good. No, it's an interesting approach.
Not to make a long story boring, I'll just give you just a really quick synopsis. I owned a coffee shop. I got out. I sold it. Starbucks was on the rise. I'm like, you know what? I see the writing on the wall. I'm going to get out while I still can.
Sure.
Okay. I was living in Lubbock, Northwest Texas, and sold it. A buddy of mine calls me out of the blue at that coffee shop, and they're like, he doesn't own it anymore, but he's sitting outside. And he lived in Phoenix, and he didn't know I'd sold it. I had talked to him forever. And anyways, before we're connected on Facebook, it's probably, early days of Facebook. I wasn't even on it, I don't think.
Right.
And, anyway, and so he's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I just sold my store. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I've been a knife maker for several years. I was like, a knife maker? What? I thought they grew on trees. What are you talking about? I thought they were made in factories overseas. And so I was like, really? And so he sends me a picture, and I was like, you made that? And he's like, yeah, I did. And he said, I'm not doing it anymore. I was working with my in-laws. We got divorced. I'm not a knife maker anymore. I don't have access to the shop.
Right.
And so he said, he said, you have a heavy art background, because my first major in college was graphic design. And so a lot of your leveling courses are arts. They're sculpting, drawing, painting, and stuff like that. And I switched over to pre-med, and I got out, and I was like, I was going to go to chiropractic school. I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to go to chiropractic school. I changed my mind. So I was like, I'm going to do a coffee shop. So I did in college. It's a twisted, just combobulated story. But anyway, I found my path. But this guy, he says, it's going to be a couple of years before I can get a knife shop put together. But meanwhile, look at this website, rwwilsonknives.com. And so there's a deal in there about training. And hit the tab, and he's talking about training people and all these students and everything. And so I call him and say, hey, I know so-and-so. I'm friends of his. I know y'all know each other. Can I learn how to do this? And he goes, how old are you? And I said, how old am I? He goes, yeah, how old are you? And I said, I'm 32. And he's like, oh, you're a young buck. Get on a plane. Get up here. I was like, okay. And so, 44 now. But he lives in West Virginia. He's like, get on a plane, fly to Pittsburgh, come pick you up. And I said, okay. I said, well, where do I stay? Is there a hotel near your town? Near your house? Oh, you stay at my house. And so he was the tomahawk maker for the movie Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford.
Yeah.
So all of them, swinging their tomahawks and everything, that he made those.
Wow.
And so I went through his, using their quotes as you do, his boot camp.
Okay.
Of drill sergeant, up at 5, cooking breakfast.
Very wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off, man. I mean, Miyagi was a softie. And
That's funny.
Anyway, we were in the shop 12 hours, then we're done and cooking.
Oh, my
and he's,
goodness.
go to bed. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I may have another type of thing. And so, anyway, but he taught me some of the basics. And then it was a matter of School of Hard Knocks for a few years.
Sure.
Then I met a guy named Dwayne Duchesne in West Texas, and he has a file work video that is a DVD.
Okay.
That was pretty popular back then. I don't know if people even buy DVDs anymore now. Now they just YouTube it. But I bought his DVD on file work, and then I saw him at a gun show, and I was like, man, I have your DVD, and it's like, seeing the celebrity, and the light opens up, it comes down. And he took me under his wing and just cut my learning curve by like 5 years.
That's awesome.
He's just brilliant. That guy can do anything.
Right.
And he's a good man, and ends up, later on, fast forward, he ends up being my best man at my wedding.
Wow.
He was a godsend. I mean, it was unbelievable.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. So you go from coffee shop, from pre-med to coffee shop extraordinaire to just jumping right in. And how long did that? So from the crazy boot camp to selling your first
a year.
Hey, there's some money in here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got tangent aborted. I'll get back on what we're talking about. But I
no, you're good.
get so excited about this stuff.
That's okay.
But I came back and I went to his shop, and I was just like, this. It felt like being back in those art classes, and I was like,
yeah.
I was like, this is home. This is a fit.
And that's when yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, man, I love the smells and the sparks and the the dirt, and I was like, man, this is great, and I got home, and I'd sold my store, and I was just taking these check your brain at the door jobs until I found something. and I found something, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with this stuff I don't want to do for the next year. I'm going to put a shop together for the next year. I'm just going to piecemeal it together, bam, 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 and out. I was coming across great equipment at, I'm getting rid of it for half price, this and that. And I was like, okay, great. Everything has fallen into place. So takes me a year. I start producing knives. Is that even right? Welcome to Lusk knife and English courses. But anyway, I start producing, like about a year later, and I get into it. And I'm about 3 months in. I'm like, I'm quitting that job. I'm out.
That's awesome.
And it was an immediate success. It was I'm still mowing yards. I'm still doing whatever it takes, but I'm spending as much time in that shop as I possibly can, making 40, 50 knives a month for $100 a piece and just slinging steel.
Yep.
Throwing sparks.
So and again, this is from kind of an amateur's perspective. I don't know the process, but from the research that I've done and the folks that I've talked to in the past about this, it seems like the progression is, you find an interest, you find the hobby, you maybe start tinkering, and then it seems like it's like you figure out the grind, and then you get a fixed blade, and fixed blades are easy to kind of sling out, as you're saying. And and now I know I've seen you make some crazy folders. So how soon after you started selling, the $50-$100 knives to, some of these higher end folders? I mean, what did that?
It was
I'm
4
sure it's
years.
a lot of trial and error.
It still is.
Yeah.
But it was 4 years before I started making folders.
Okay.
And it was, I don't know if it was self-fulfilled prophecy or not, but whenever I started, I was like, it'd be probably 4 or 5 years before I can have enough confidence to make a folder, because I was pretty particular about stuff. And sometimes you can be your own worst critic on things. And so I would look at my work and go, this isn't good enough. I'm not good enough to make a folder. I'm going to keep going and keep going. And then looking back on it, I go, I wasn't good enough to make a folder. But I started anyway.
I don't think that's crazy. I think that one of the common things that I see in some of the makers that are putting out, we'll call it $500 plus knives, that they have that sort of meticulous, really, just dialed in, super critical, but at the end of the day, it shows. And so I think that's to be understood. And I think that's part of the recipe for success is you have to realize pretty meticulous.
That just because you finished it doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
Oh, look, I made this knife. Isn't it great? No, you finished.
Right.
It's not good. And so, and I would look at it that way. I finished this. And they say no art is ever complete. It's just abandoned at some point.
Sure.
And if someone orders a $600 knife, I give them a $700 knife. I go a little bit above and beyond, but I'm not going to give them a $2,200 knife for $600 or $700. I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to go above and beyond from what they're expecting. Yeah. And so when they get something, oh, dude, this is so much better than what I thought I was going to do. But I always had that mentality of just because it's done doesn't mean it's good.
Sure.
And so I would look at my work and go, congratulations, you finished a product, but I need to look at this guy and he makes me look stupid.
Sure.
I look like a caveman clacking rocks together compared to this guy. And so what do I need to do to get as good as this guy is? And it's just a constant going up the ladder. Okay, I passed him. I'm going up the next few rungs. Okay, I passed him. And it's just a race. Yeah. And I'm not expecting to be first place. I don't think I'm the best maker. I'll never be the best maker. I need to be the best maker I can be.
Sure. That's good. And I like that attitude. I think again, that also speaks to a lot of the level of success you've had. Just the right attitude and the right, going above and beyond for the folks that are spending their hard-earned money. It's
a compliment to me.
Yeah.
If in my very first knife show was, I can't remember the year. Let's say 08. Ish. We could probably look it up online because it was the first year that the A.G. Russell knife event ever took place. Okay. And R.W. Wilson that I learned from, come on up to Rogers, Arkansas, and I'll give you a spot on my table. And so he gives me 2 feet of table. And so,
valuable real estate.
Yeah. And so I walk in and, man, I'm in the same room as some legends. Yeah. Did I deserve it? Not at all. You're shaking your head.
That early on, yeah.
But, whenever I sold $630 worth of knives at that show, to me, that was big time because they chose me over them. Of course, they didn't have $2,000 in their pocket, but it's a compliment to me that someone will spend their hard-earned money, and I take that seriously because if someone gives me an order, if it's $300, it's going to get the same amount of attention as a $1,200.
Yep. That's and that again, common theme among the folks that I see doing really, really cool things. So it's good to see that. So I want to talk a little bit about, and we'll come back around to it at some point, but I just want to give a quick introduction to your other, I won't call it a side venture, but your other venture. So you don't only make knives, you also make knife making videos.
Right.
So
.com. Right.
knifemakingvideos.com.
Right.
After I found you and started doing some digging, I saw all of your knives, and then I saw the link on your website. I was like, so I started doing some digging, and I thought, okay, and I thought what other people probably think and why you kind of call this out on your website. I thought, well, okay, what does he do that YouTube doesn't? And so for those wondering what knifemakingvideos.com is, give me your pitch on it.
Okay. Well, excuse me. What I decided years ago is I need to start teaching this. In DVD was the first thought.
Sure.
But hey, this is going way the dodo bird. Okay, so let's get out of this. What can we do? Let's do a site where people can download these. Now, how about a membership site? Can't be downloaded. Have to pay to have a membership to it. But what makes it different than YouTube channels and videos is I go into great in depth of just everything you need to know. They are good camera angles. It's good sound. I've got a lapel mic. I have good lights. I've even bought some DVDs where they had to go in and put subtitles in the box. They had the equipment running at the same time. And they've got it like 10 feet away. Yep. Like I can't even see what you're doing. Yep. But it's like just my hands and the piece that we're working on. And so it's and some of them is a little backed up a little bit, so you can get kind of a bigger view. But it just goes in depth because there are so many things I wanted to learn, Greg, that weren't taught. Yeah. And so I would get on YouTube years ago before I did this, and I was like, you skipped what I was looking for. What drill bit is that, and how fast is it running? You skipped it, or what belt is that, or what blah blah blah. And so I'm like, here's how you plug in your equipment. Not that bad, but this is how we design a knife. Yeah. Don't put a swedge on a skinner. Don't put a false edge on it. Your finger's going to be on the back of the spine. Don't put a double edge on it. It's common sense things that form follows function. Let's teach you how to design a good knife. Let's teach you how to make a good knife and have good camera angles. Plus, you have access to me. Right. And if you want to call or you want to write me, I'm there. And it's $19.95 a month. Yeah. Which some people are like, are you crazy? I can go learn it for free on YouTube. Who are you learning it from? Right. I've literally seen 800,000 hits on a 17-year-old going, I ain't never done this before, but we'll see what happens. I'm like, really? You're learning from that? And not, my deal is that if I want to learn how to do something well, I'm not going to go to someone who's only done it 3 or 4 times. Right. Or someone who does it really well, they might not be a good teacher. Sure. And so I want to be able to say, look, I'm not the best in the world, but I hold my own, but I'll teach you how to make a good knife. Yeah. I'm going to teach you how to do it, and I'm going to cut your learning time down by 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And I have people go through the courses, and you can stay a month or 10 months as long as you want to. Yeah. Whenever you're done, it's just a recurring bill, you're out. Yeah. I've got like 275 5-minute videos on different, fixed blades, bolsters, mammoth ivory, liner locks, hidden tang buoys. Everything. Yeah. I mean, it seems so, and again, just in kind of digging through it and reading about it, I mean, I feel like for me, if I wanted to do it, that's the route I'd go. I'm not going to go, knock on somebody's door and say, can I, well, and I think that the approach sometimes is, I'm going to go find somebody that makes them and try to spend some shop time. And I think that's a luxury that
not everybody can afford.
Right.
And at the same time, I think that this approach, I don't think you could cram 50 people in this shop, but having that resource out there,
right.
I think it's great. I think it teaches a skill that, is knives aren't going away. Right?
Well, it's an online school. It's not just light. It's in depth. I get into science and I get into math, but I'm like, look, if you want to learn this and you're self-sufficient in this, you want to be autonomous and be your own boss, or if you want to just do this as a hobby, I'll teach you either way. I'll teach you how to sell them. Whatever. I'm not going to teach you how to be found on Instagram, because obviously I'm not good at that. But I can teach you how to talk to people and how to sell your stuff too.
Yeah. I thought it was a really, really cool way to show off what you do, share it with the masses, and again, teach a skill that I wouldn't know where else to go outside of, again, finding a knife maker and trying to bug them for shop time. So
and people were doing that. They were like, I wish I could come to your shop, but I can't.
Yeah.
I live too far away. I was like, what can I offer them? But I want it to be affordable, but I want it to be worth my time. It takes, as you know, editing and all this other stuff. But if I'm shooting a course, you can watch it in 45 minutes. It took me 2 weeks to make that course.
Well, I mean, these 45-minute to an hour episodes, I mean, I do minimal editing, and they still take me a while. So video, I can't even imagine. That's crazy.
It's fun. I mean, it is the most enjoyable job I've ever had, is making knives and teaching people how to do it, because it's hard and it's dangerous, and I want to be able to give proper instructions on how to do it, and I have people go, man, I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to sign up for your stuff, and I did. And I'm stupid for not doing this before. Like, this is the best thing ever. And you win some, you lose some. So
that's how it goes. So I love it. I love seeing that, and I think it's just really cool to see that kind of stuff out there. So, when did the website become a part of Paul Lusk Knives? I mean, when did knife making videos make its debut?
I finished it almost 3 years ago.
Okay.
It was launched June of 16. Really? Wow. Yeah, June. I guess
back,
it was
right?
June, July. I think it was June of 16.
Yeah.
But it took a year and a half to do it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And just figuring out. Well, it's kind of like your setup here, and being a knife maker, I had to learn about which computer do I get to do editing. How do I edit? What microphone do I get? What do I do? What tripod do I get? And on and on and on. And it was then, how do we do this? And then writing a curriculum and then figuring out, does this video go in this course, or does it go in the bolsters course, or does it? And so it was a year and a half of research and filming and editing, and you open it up, and there was this mass explosion of crickets chirping, and you're just like, oh well, but then it started getting a little traction.
Builds, No, we've kind of joked about not having a big presence on Instagram, but I think what you've done with that site and with Paul Lusk Knives, I think it's as hard, if not harder, than building a presence on social media, because social media is very you've got to be on it all the time. You've got to be consistent with posting, and once you get into that kind of realm, then it just kind of starts to follow. So in 2 years time, or almost 2 years time, I've gone to a couple thousand followers. It's not anything massive, but it's just being part of that audience. Then people kind of start to show up, but as someone that spends time on the SEO side of things and does things like that for my job, it's impressive to see, without that social media presence, you've still got a site that pops up pretty high up in rankings. You've got a video instruction website that's got some traffic. I mean, you're doing you're taking a different approach, but it's impressive to see.
You. Well, the interesting thing is that excuse me, these pollen allergies are really catching up. People come to me at shows. Dude, you've got my dream job. This is exactly what I want to do. And I tell people, look, this is fulfilling. This is good. But you're a chief cook and bottle washer, okay? I'm my own web guy. You know, I'm my own marketing agent.
Yep.
I am shipping and receiving. You know, I am accounting. Well, my wife's accounting, but you know, but you know, I need to give you a tour of the shop. You know, shipping and receiving is over there. You know, but you know, and you know, I design the knives, I fabricate the knives, I sell the knives. You know, whereas companies, they have different, you know, different people doing all these.
You've got infrastructure that
Yes.
supports those, you know, different legs.
And the great thing about being self-employed entrepreneur is it's autonomous. The bad thing about being a self-employed entrepreneur is it's autonomous. You don't have anyone telling you how to do stuff.
Yep.
You know what you want to do, but you're like, oh, scratch my head. You know, how do I do it? And so it's you have to be a jack of all trades, master of hopefully knife making and selling.
Right.
You know? But
yeah, I mean, I think that's again the folks that I've talked to that do the same kind of thing. They've got a good hand. It's a juggling act, but they've found a good rhythm. So, and I think you have too. So I mentioned, you know, going from like fixed blades to folders to fancier materials and stuff like that. What was one of the things that just I guess gets my attention or intrigues me the most is what was that? What would you say was like the biggest thing or that aha moment in your knife making? So what was it that really took you to the next level, or that step where you're like, man, now we're cooking with gas kind of mentality? What was that?
I think that's a good question. You have different little marks in your career that you look back on, and you know, your first knife, you're like, oh, you know, it cuts. It's finished, you know. I think, you know, one big confidence booster was doing my first folder.
Okay.
And just when in making my first hidden tang buoy, you know, something that's different, not a full tang slab, you know, some scales on the sides and grind it out, you know, it's something that's a little bit more of an achievement. But the folder, that's a big deal. And it's sitting over there, and it should have been taken better care of. But you open it up, click, locks. You close it, detent ball, click. You know, no side slop, no lock rock. You're just like, oh, you know, and it's just such a, you know, tear in your eye moment of like, man, you know, I showed it to a friend of mine in Fort Worth, and he was like, dude, you know, patting his chest, he's like, you're making it, man, you know, and I'm like, it's okay, honey, you know, but you know, and that's wonderful that people, you know, support you that way, and it's just it's hard to narrow down to that, but there are just a few things like that where you're like, I did that. And one thing is whenever I first started, and this might be the answer we're looking for now that I've kind of talked it out, is I had this World's Greatest Book of Knives 2005. It was used. It wasn't used, but it was like on the $2 rack at this bookstore. You know, no one had bought it in a clearance rack, and so I bought it, and at my parents' house, and I'm looking at it, and my dad's like, wow, look at all these knives. And in the back, there's this big directory. And he's like, sure are a lot of knife makers out there, son. You know, and I said, there are 7 billion people on this planet. I can find enough room for me to get some business. Yeah. You know, and he wasn't being discouraging, but he was just like, hey, keep it real. Right. You know, keep it real.
That's good.
But a few years later, I'm in that book.
Nice.
And I think that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
Whenever a friend calls you, dude, you're in the world's greatest knives, you know, and I'm like, what?
That's
you know,
awesome.
aren't they supposed to call you?
Right.
You know, something like that. And so I've got this guy. Well, actually, the guy that got me involved in knife making, he kind of watches, and he'll call me, dude, you're in Blade Magazine. I'm like, really? And he's like, I'll send you the link. I'm like, okay. And you know, dude, you're in Knives Illustrated. I'm
That's
like,
cool.
Okay.
That's cool.
And so, but because I don't buy that stuff.
Yep.
You know, I'm just out here making money, putting food on the table.
Yep.
But I'm thrilled whenever that happens. But it's just not something that's on my mental radar.
Sure.
You know?
No, that's fair. I think that it's, you know, it comes with the evolution, the progression of the business. So I'm always curious, and this is kind of changing directions, but what is your collection like? What do you keep knife wise?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No. Well, not totally true. I have a couple that, they're users. Like my wife's got one in her purse, and my son has 2 of my knives, and he's 4. And so he has a what I call an Urban Instinct fixed blade. And it's a mirror polished CPM 154 with ivory micarta, ivory paper micarta. Yeah. And it's beautiful. Yeah. But the thing is, it's taper tang. It's got Corby bolts in the sides, and it's mirror polished out. And I gave it to him when he was 3. And so it's in the zipper pouch. And Daddy, can I see my knife? And so I'll zip it, unzip it, and just show it to him, and there, never holds it or anything like that. And so every year I'm going to give him a knife. Right. And so the other day he got a neck knife, and so he's 4. So when he turns 5, he'll get something else. And the girls, they're not as interested, but they need something, so I need to make them some stuff. But not much of a collection. Whenever you first start this, you can get attached to your work. And I'm not. I'm like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
You
can turn around and make yourself another one.
And so, but whenever, the first 2 or 3 years, you're like, oh man, that was so good. I gotta get pictures. And now I'm like, oh, I should take a picture of that folder,
So are there any that you made that stick out where you're like, man, I'm proud of this one. This was a good one. Hate to see it go, or you're proud of it.
There are a few that I've done. Corbin's fixed blade that I kept for him. I still make those. There's one that's the cover shot of my website right now. It's a folder with blue crosscut mammoth ivory with the stainless Damascus, and it has some tan in the handle, and that's sedimentary rock that formed inside there. A guy here in town owns that. There are a couple of buoys I've made that, made one out of Texas Longhorn handle that was it was probably about a 12-inch blade or so, and it's just the balance. There's something if you make a buoy correctly, a lot of people will put the handles on backwards because it looks cool, and you're like, that doesn't index well. Right. You need to pick it up, automatically index where the cutting is forward, not at your ear, not sideways, and so it just indexed really, really. It just had great balance, and there are just a few that stand out. And then some people will come up to you and go, "Oh, here's a knife you made me 8 years ago." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." But you can't remember all of them, obviously.
No, that's cool. I'm always curious to see what one of the things I ask in the Maker series. On the site, I would ask, what do you carry with you? So for me, I guess I'm not on the tactical side of everyday carry, but I do, I have a knife with me all the time. I have, I like to keep a pry for things like my tripod mount and stuff like that. So having a good flathead is nice. But is there anything that you keep on you all the time? Anything other than maybe your phone? Because I feel like that's a popular answer. I
actually keep a Leatherman in my pocket.
Nice.
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I love Leatherman.
Which model?
Oh, I don't know. It's the one you get for Father's Day. I don't know.
It's good.
It's just the
That's
cheapie,
good.
from
No.
REI.
These are great. But the rebar. Yeah.
Oh, is that the rebar?
Yep.
Okay. But I use a dog out of that thing.
Right.
And I had a folder of mine that I carried, and I got out of the truck, and it grabbed my the seatbelt grabbed my clip, and prank. I'm just like, oh crud. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
And so it been, and I need to redo that clip. But
yeah, I keep one in the bag.
Yeah, see, there you go.
This is an OG Leatherman tool.
But for going out or something like that, I've got I always have a couple in my bag that are for sale. But if they haven't sold yet, I might put one on or something.
Yeah.
If we're on a walk, I'll always carry a fixed blade.
Yeah.
I'll have like a little neck knife or something like that. I really don't have too much of a collection of my work, but I've got some old stragglers that weren't good enough to sell that are sitting around. So I'm like, that's kind of ugly.
So do you have any in your collection from other makers? Do you keep a collection from others, or is it really just
not that I can
and
think?
selling?
I don't
Okay.
think I have anybody else's knives.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. So a Leatherman, that's a wonderfully simple and sophisticated answer all at the same time.
Well, the thing is, I would make a knife of mine, and then it would sell. out of my pocket. And so, and I need to do that again. It's just that, my own wife put me on my own waiting list to get my own folder. And so she's like, I'll give you 25% off if you write me a check. I'm like, and honestly, I tried to make myself a folder for a long time. It was probably a year and a half before I got my own folder. And I get halfway done and someone come over, hey, what's that?
Yep.
And it's theirs.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, I'd start over, and it's always on the back burner because the cobbler's children have no shoes.
Right.
And so it is me. I don't have my own knives.
No, that's cool.
But I am. We just had our iron anniversary. It's you do the paper and rock, paper, scissors, anniversary stuff. And so we had our iron, and so it's going to be a set of kitchen knives I'm going to make my wife. She's like, is this going to take 4 years? I was like, maybe 3. But it's like, I'm going to fit them in. I'm going to make you whatever you want, cool. As many as you want, I will get them done. That's so, cool. Yeah, I love making kitchen knives. Yeah,
I was going to say, there are a few makers I'm familiar with, none that stick out right now, but just I feel like it's almost a whole different world from folders and fixed blades to kitchen knives. I think there's and maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but I feel like it's just a totally different world. But I love seeing some really fancy kitchen knives come out.
I'll show you some. The deal is people go, well, it's the same thing. Well, it's if you're used to playing baseball and you go play softball.
Yep.
It's a different ball. It's a different pitch. Vice versa. It's not the same. And they both have edges, but the heat treat, the geometry.
Well, just how you use them is different,
Yeah, just everything is different. So you have to do your homework about how is this going to fit. You have clearances and you have this and that and blah, blah, blah. And it's a big deal. Yeah. And you can tell people who didn't care if it was a big deal or not. Yep. They didn't see the difference between those two.
And think it works.
And so with me, I was intimidated by it. I was like, man, that's just totally different.
Yeah.
And I just sat down and I was like, what do I need to do to get into this? And so I got to thinking about it. I got to just visually studying these things. And I was like, oh, okay, that is a totally different grind than how I do a buoy or how I do a skinner or something. So it's going to be held in a different direction. It's going to be blah, blah, blah. And I did it. And my wife's like, you think this is going to work? I said, I guarantee you it's going to work. I'll be willing to bet you a year's worth of sales is going to work. She's like, I don't know. And I put them up on Facebook. And bam, 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 bam. And she's like, see, I told you. I'm like, yeah, you sure did.
Yeah.
You sure did. Thanks, honey.
That's funny.
But it just, it was sets and sets within like 3 days.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it's not sets, it's pairs. And so it's a chef knife and a paring knife.
Yep.
But I'm going to make her like, whatever she wants. But usually it's just those two because there's those two most popular ones.
Yep.
But, and it's unbelievable. And people are like, I've been waiting for you to make kitchen knives, you moron. What took you so long?
Yeah, and there's something, after having cheap knives and then getting a good kitchen knife, there's something about it that's
ours
just
are terrible.
Makes it.
They're terrible. You look at them and they go dull. And I was like, why am I not doing this? And so I brought one of them out the other day because the grind was totally terrible. I reground one of them, our old, whatever they are, kitchen knives are awful.
Yeah.
They're like $20 for 50 of them.
Right.
It's just, I was like, I'm just going to reground this and put a new edge in. It was getting too thick to sharpen. And I was like, I've got to do this because it's like you cut up some breakfast sausage and you got to throw it away.
Yep.
It's bad.
That's too funny. All right, cool. So a couple other questions I wanted to hit on that should be fairly straightforward. I've seen you work with, stainless Damascus and a few others. What materials do you like to work with the most?
Damascus steel.
Okay.
Damascus steel for Damascus. I like CPM 154 a lot. I've started using AEBL on some things too. It's interesting how different steels react to different grinds, different heat treats and stuff. But I like working with mammoth ivory a lot. I like the paper micarta, the ivory micarta, because the deal is you don't see it very often because it's hard to do. It is very, very difficult to do. And so you get burn marks, you get scratches, and so you have to know some tricks. And it's whenever you can pull off a knife that is mirror polished with ivory micarta on it and doesn't have any ripples in the steel, no scratches, and it's it's pure. You're just like
Yeah, it's a good looking knife for sure. I'm an ivory micarta fan for sure.
I like maroon linen micarta a lot. You put a nice taper tang, some white spacers in there. It's sexy. It looks really good.
Sets it off. Okay, so this question, when I ask it, you don't have to call anybody out when we get to the second half of it. But the first half is, what in trend wise, what are you seeing in the knife world? If you have any ideas that come to mind that you really like seeing.
I don't know.
So it's okay. So perspective. So this question is written from my thought process was, okay, I keep an eye on the social media end of it, and I see all the stuff that comes out instantly. So, and I've noticed, we mentioned this in I think the first chunk that didn't get recorded. I'm starting to see a lot of like modern traditional stuff becoming popular. Okay. That seems to be your higher end slip joints, your more traditional folders are really hot right now.
Right.
So that I guess that was kind of what I was thinking, but from a maker's perspective, whether it's super steel's becoming super popular or whatever, I mean, what are you seeing that you're happy to have happening in the knife community?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm happy to see more people not relying on so much automated equipment. I like that. Whenever people are good software programmers and they know what buttons to push, and then zing, 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 we've got a knife, and they're like, I'm a custom knife maker. No, you're a knife manufacturer.
Yep.
And so I like when the fact that people, excuse me, are just getting into and trying their best to carve, no pun intended, carve their way into their own on this. But also the things I don't like are or the fact that so many people can manipulate other people to think that to buy their knives at a certain price where they shouldn't be sold at a certain price.
Yeah.
That's
an interesting topic. So, and this is just from my perspective.
Is this part two? Did I jump
sort
the gun and go part two?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I guess, the opposite end of that question. What do you not like seeing? And yeah, that, so I can't remember who I think it was Blaine, Cobalt Customs. We started talking about like this argument of production knives. And one thing that I've seen that I've been kind of on the fence about. I was really against it. Now I'm kind of in the middle / okay with it. But lately it seems like there's a lot of companies from overseas that are pairing up with makers and doing production versions of maybe some of their customs.
Right.
So I think of Berg Blades, the knife that I have in my pocket right now. That was actually the one that kind of converted me. Before I was very against it. I'm like, okay, We Knives over in China is pairing up with all these really cool makers.
Right. And
I guess you can look at it two ways. Well, my thought process, it kind of cheapens the product and the design. I mean, a production version of $1,000 or $2,000 folder that's now $200.
Right.
I'm just, I don't, are you familiar with Ramon Chavez knives?
Skull.
The skull pocket clip.
Okay,
yep.
Okay.
So his knives were, secondary on them was ridiculous. It was $900 plus without question, and I'm probably off on that. And now he's got these, I think it's Reat knives that makes his Ultramar series, where they're $200 and $300, and they are selling like hotcakes. I see them all over the place. Yeah. But for me, like from a branding perspective, it gets his design in more hands, but does it cheapen? Does it take away? And so I guess that was.
The thing that pops in my mind about this, two things: capitalism, which is great.
Sure.
If I can get royalties on a knife that I designed once, I would do it.
Yeah.
but
absolutely.
This also goes into the category of there were many years ago car kits out there. So you get a Volkswagen, you strip it down, you put a Porsche body on it, or you do that and you put an Excalibur body on it,
right?
Or a Shelby, it's a kit,
Yep.
and so you're like, nah, are you seeing it kind of that way?
Yeah, not, and again, not that. So again, the Berg Blade Slim that I have, it's made by We Knives. It's on the higher end of price for what I would pay for like a production knife,
right?
But I love it. It's a great knife.
Oh, yeah.
So again, it's I that's why I say I'm a little bit of a converted. I was a hater, and now I'm kind of like, I see the point. I get it. So I don't know. That was what I kind of had in mind when I
that's
not
not hitting me in the
question.
same place as hitting you. The thing that hits me is really slick marketing and selling a knife for a ridiculous amount of money that my 4-year-old could make.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's a free country. And if people can do it, okay. But I just have this conscience about me that I'm not gonna make what I would put $300 on and put $3,300 on it. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Blaine from Cobalt Customs, and he does no CNCing, no water jetting. I mean, it is from the ground up, made by hand. He doesn't do any forging that I know of, but otherwise it's all it's all done by hand. And so I don't know if maybe that's kind of where you're getting at is there some folks that do everything by hand, and that price is deserved and earned and fair to an extent, and then there's some folks that punch a couple buttons and you've got
that, or they do everything by hand and it's really bad, shoddy work.
Yeah, sure. That's the other end of it.
It really is.
Yep.
And then it's slick marketing, and you're just like, oh man, and it. That kind of sticks.
No, I can see that, and I mean, and it's to your point. Yeah, some people have more money than sense, and so that happens.
It's just selling an inferior product to people who don't know any better.
Yeah,
and I'm not being critical or but about the people who buy it. It's that some people are just not getting what they're paying for out there, and I want to make sure that I'm not doing that. But some people, you see them achieving this stellar level in the industry, and they've made 50 knives, and that's it, and it's like, okay, all right.
I mean that's a totally fair perspective, and I'm inclined to agree, because I think that I mean there's some folks that I've kind of watched start that journey of I'm going to be a knife maker, and they, fortunately, to their credit, the 2 or 3 that come to mind are still in kind of those infant stages where they're just getting started, and they seem very down to earth still, where they're very much like, I'm still fine tuning, I'm still learning, it's still not perfect. So it's good, and it's good to hear that, and I think that's I think that's how you need to be until you get to the point where you are, producing good stuff and you've got that experience under the belt.
I think you should always do that, because with me, I do a deal on Facebook that it's a customer follow along on live on Facebook, and so I let people watch their knives being made, and so whenever they order something, they're going to see at least part of their knife being made, and I'll send them a note.
That's too cool.
I'm going live on your knife in 10 minutes. Okay,
that's cool. I like that a lot.
So they can watch it live. They might catch the second half. They might catch it tonight. But it's always family friendly. I make sure that, but I always make sure that if people are wanting to learn something, I'm teaching too. And because I say, hey, this is my way of doing it. This is what I've learned after a few thousand knives. Okay, doesn't mean I wrote the book on it. I made the videos, but I didn't write the book on it. but I try to do that and just make sure, like, hey, there are a few knives I want to learn how to do. That I just don't know how to do it.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I can't say I know everything, and my knives aren't perfect, but they're a lot better than they used to be.
Right.
I'll tell you that much.
As long as they're progressing.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I don't have a ton more questions. I did want to, so I have a note here about different models. So how many, if I'm looking at the Paul Lusk books trying to put together an order, like how many different models do you make right now?
Oh,
Do they all have names?
Yeah. there's John and Steve, and I don't know. We've got a handful of fixed blades. I've got I have some stuff that isn't on the site, but I generally have 5 or 6 different fixed blades in 2 or 3 different folders. Yeah. I don't want to overwhelm people. Some people have, I've got 325 different templates. I'm like,
total of 10,000 combinations.
Exactly. Yeah, I got 1.42 million combinations on this. Yeah. And it's hard enough for people to make a decision because it's just overwhelming.
Yeah,
if you've never bought a house before and you go out and you're like, oh no, and so, or you never bought a car, you're just like, do I want leather? Do I want a sunroof? How much is it going to cost to do this? And so I like to guide them through something. I say, look, if you don't, if you want a combination of these 2 knives, if you want the Endeavor handle with the Rio Concho or blade or something like that, or Little River pocket skinner with a Ridge Runner handle, or we can kind of Frankenstein something
Make
together.
It work,
but I'll tell you what, the way these are made will work. Okay, we don't necessarily need to fix what ain't broke.
Yeah.
And so and I'll say, look, if it's for your husband, how big is he? What size of glove does he wear? Blah blah blah. What's he going to use it for? Okay, this is what he needs. And just say, let me help you out as much as you can, because it can be an overwhelming task trying to, there's just information overload.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I try to come out with something new every year and say, okay, this is a new fixed blade, or this is what blah blah blah. Because it's a car company mentality for a lot of people. They come up, what you got that's new?
Yeah.
What's new? Well, I have this new handle material, but I also need a new design too.
Yeah.
So, I've got this new one. I think you're going to like it. You're a collector of mine, pick it up, see what you think about it. And they're like, oh man, this is the best one yet, or whatever. And some I phase out. There might be some on that website you're looking at that I haven't made in a year.
Right.
That I've just kind of phased it out,
Yeah.
and I haven't gotten an order for it. But,
That's fair.
There are a few that just stand out to people, and I've trashed the others.
Yeah. That's cool. I like it. All right. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to bring up or that you want to mention or talk about that you can think of?
I've enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I was wondering if you're bringing your wife and your cat, but they didn't, they didn't show up. But
frequent listeners will understand those references.
You have to go back to season 1 for that.
Listen, so this is funny. So we're. By the time this post, we'll be close to closing, so it doesn't matter. But we're in the process, or we're starting the process of buying a house that's being built, and now we're getting a 4th bedroom because we only have 3 right now, and so I think that 4th bedroom is going to be the office / podcast room, and so then we can close the door and no cat interruptions, no refrigerator in the background making noises. So. That's the hope, at least.
Well, you heard the truck start up.
Right. It's not.
When sent my wife shopping already, because I was like, I don't want kids in the backyard on the playground and monkeying around,
So if you, one day maybe I'll dig it up and post it. But before this setup existed, I had one mic. It was like like you see in a recording studio with the shock mount and an arm, and I have a workbench. It's maybe this big, maybe a little smaller, out in the garage. And so I had my laptop. I had that mounted, the arm mounted onto my workbench, and my wife and I sat and shared that microphone in our garage and recorded
I heard you
test.
You need to sit closer to the mic and do it because you're sharing.
Well, well, when we this was before anything, we were out there on. I mean, our son was asleep, and it was, I don't even know what time it was, but the garage was open, and it was an afternoon. I mean, he was probably napping. And you can hear somebody mowing their yard, cars driving by. Yeah. It was, so it's come a long way, but we're still working.
I never hear anything from my neighbors. And about 30 minutes before you got here, this is a quiet community up here.
Yeah.
But they were in the backyard arguing. I was like, really? Out of all days, we've lived in this house for a year and a half. I haven't heard a peep out of them. And today,
of all days,
they go wild at each other. But I talk about podcasts. I was asked about, a year or so ago to these guys called me and they're like, hey, we're going to do this podcast and it's going to be a knife podcast. And they're knife makers, and they're like, your name always comes up to be on this
Yeah.
as a co-host. I was like, oh, thanks. And so they send me this, little mission statement and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And they go into, they send me a microphone and, a little webcam and all this other stuff. And it's, they're going to all this work. They buy this intricate software and then they're getting all of the specialized internet and all this other stuff, and man, we're getting geared up.
Yep.
No pun intended. Hey, geared up, coming here, but then they're like, it looks like the show's off because we can't figure out the software and stuff.
Oh, that's great.
I was just like, man, I was amped. I was like, man, this would be fun to do a weekly show like what you're doing. And we're going to have different people, on different makers, and it's going to be a video and all this other stuff. And we can't get it to work.
Yeah, well, and I to their credit, I did a little bit of research. I'd edited audio in the past. I've edited a little bit of video. I'm slightly functional when it comes to Premiere and those editing softwares. But I did some digging and I found the recorder that I wanted and all that stuff. But I have not ventured into like remote guests just yet. And at some point I will, but it's later on. I
said, guys, I said, we're knife makers. We're not, this is
right.
We've bitten off more than we can chew with this thing.
Listen, there are people that would listen to that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that people find this interesting. For me, there are a few knife podcasts that I listen to, and some of them are more on the comical side where they're just kind of chatting and talking and telling stories, and that's great. And then there's some where it's really, really big gearheads talking about inferior steels and it's only you might find it interesting. I might find it interesting, but my wife's never going to listen to that, the goal of this was to have something that was a little bit more generic and could work. And
I find myself steering away from that stuff.
Yeah,
because there's always an opinion. There's always a troll. There's always, and I might be a little trollish today about some people are selling some stuff that's really garbage. But the deal
totally
is,
fair.
But the deal is that you can't put anything on social media without someone, like, oh man, I love this deal. That's racist. I'm like, what? It's like, is that xenophobic? I didn't know that. I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's just a battleground, and I've just kind of turned a blind eye to it. But yeah, it can be messy out there. It really can. And I've listened to some stuff, and I'm just like, I don't care. It's people arguing over what's better, Chevy or Ford, or there's no answer to it, and it's just a bunch of people spinning their wheels.
Before I'm at my current job, my last job, I was at an ad agency, and all my job was buying media for podcasts. So, podcast and local radio, and so you're if you're in Houston, your 104s, your 93Q, all those. Like, we bought ads for all those guys, but we also did podcasts, and that's what kind of started this up for me, was just having to do that deep dive for work. Like, I had to find what podcast existed, which, and God, if there's a topic out there, there's a podcast for it. So I just, again, the goal started, can I do this? Can I get it and post it on iTunes? And now here we are. This will be like the 20 or 23rd episode or something like that total.
Wow.
So we've done a few, and there's a podcast that I listen to, a guy that I like, and he always said when he first started his podcast, he said, you're not a real podcast until you get to 100 episodes. So that's my goal, is like, I want to hit 100.
You're just imaginary right now.
Yes.
There's imaginary podcast.
Yes, we're not real yet.
No, this is just a figment of imagination.
You've got to pay your dues.
That's right.
So,
yeah. Well, it's kind of like in the knife world. You have to do that. Just because I own a reclining chair and a pair of pliers, I'm not a dentist.
Right.
I'm not yanking teeth. You do have to go through some stuff, but to get some street cred, I guess. But I understand that.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you again for listening.
Sure.
Thank you for letting me come into your shop, and I'm about to take all kinds of pictures and oogle all kinds of knives. Look at
that folder right there.
Woo!
Yeah.
I'm holding. Ooh, I'm gonna make sure I post some pictures of this thing. It's beautiful. Thank you again for letting me come in and bend your ear for an hour and talk. If you guys like this, be sure to subscribe. Make sure you give us a rating on iTunes. It really helps us show up in the category and the results and all that stuff. And be sure to tell your friends, tag us, ask us questions on Instagram if you want them answered. And if everything continues as normal, April will be back in the next episode. All right. And thank you. Goodbye.